Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee, and this week I want to talk about battlefield tours. Are they useful for the wargamer? So another week has shot past, and this Sunday I will be addressing another subscriber question. David Tuck asked, how useful are battlefield visits and what's your favourite? So for such a short question, I think there's a lot to unpack here. So before discussing my favourite battlefield walk, I want to look at the origins of the pastime, its pitfalls and its potential benefits. So without further ado, let's dive in. Now, the modern practice of visiting battlefields arguably started in the mid-18th century with Frederick the Great. He believed in the teaching benefits for his officers of visiting and walking historical locations. Students were encouraged to observe the landscape and analyse tactics based on what they could see. The modern visitor may well do the same, but could just as likely be there to see where a relative fought or to learn more about a particular period of history. Anyone who has ever visited battlefield sites will know they can invoke detailed and vivid images of the past, and of course the experience is enhanced if you come at it with a degree of understanding of the history, placing events in real locations. And if the landscape and its features haven't changed significantly, it can provide clues and insights that assist historians and wargamers alike to comprehend the course of a battle. Now, visiting a battlefield is not without its problems and pitfalls, of course. The aforementioned emotional connection that walking a historical site can evoke can make understanding it and seeing problems with historical texts more difficult. Disconnecting the emotional reaction from the analytical analysis is often harder than many anticipate. And for older battles, their exact location can be disputed or vague, with little evidence to pin them down. Classic example would be the change in the location of the battlefield of Bosworth. Not very well historically documented, but modern archaeological evidence has moved the battlefield several miles from its original supposed location. And landscapes themselves don't remain static, either due to the encroachment of urbanisation, geological processes such as shifting rivers, or even climate change affecting plant life, land usage, etc. And poorly researched or curated tours can often lead observers to wrong conclusions and stifle new or critical thinking. And if, like me, arthritis is making mobility troublesome, the degree of physical fitness required to walk these sites can often hinder the learning experience for wargamers and general visitors alike. Despite these problems, there are huge benefits to visiting a battlefield site, particularly for those where you can be more certain of the location. From a wargamer's perspective, being able to observe buildings and terrain that perhaps hasn't changed can be hugely beneficial, and I'm thinking in particular of the Two Fat Loudies Arnhem game that I saw recently at Partisan. Prime example, where many of the buildings featured on the table were replicas based on pictures of the same buildings that still exist today. And while I listed the emotional experience that a battlefield tour can evoke as a possible negative, I also believe it can be a benefit too. As per a recent chat here, wargamers occupy a unique position as part historian, part enthusiast, and many of us, our research is in books and photos. Walking a battlefield can give an entirely new perspective on a landscape that cannot be conveyed in a unit or combat diary or a history book. Now, I've visited lots of battlefields over the years, and knees permitting, I hope to visit many more. All have been uniquely interesting experiences, particularly if it's a battlefield I know well. However, my favourite has to be Hastings, and not necessarily for the reasons you might think. When my eldest daughter was about 6 or 7, we visited Hastings, the Battle Abbey, and did the battlefield walk. It was a self-guided tour with an audio guide and signposted points directing the walker along a predetermined route. And I took my daughter around and pretty much ignored all the signposts and just told her the story of the battle. And for me, the point that stands out most was standing below Senlac Hill and realising how tall it looked. And I was chatting away to her and she was absolutely glued to the story. And then I turned around and realised I'd acquired a group of other people who were following me around as if I was a tour guide. So it stood out there, a link to my daughter's growing up that will always stay with me, and of course an interesting moment as well because other people seemed to be reacting to the way I was telling the story of the battle as I walked around. And then we walked up the slope towards where the Saxon lines would have been, and I was quite out of puff by the time we got to the top of that slope. You don't get an impression of how steep that hill is from the top, but you do when you're standing at the bottom. And for the first time I really appreciated the strength of the position and the difficulty of the task the Normans faced in assailing a shield wall when they reached the top. Harold may have been slightly over hasty in coming to battle before gathering more strength, and there's various history books that suggest that, but he wasn't a fool and he did know a strong position when he saw one. So as well as being a good site to visit, it's also got sentimental importance to me because it was the first time I'd taken one of my children around on a battlefield tour. My daughter's 27 now and still remembers that walk, and so it remains special for both of us, and that's why I always list Hastings as one of my favourite battlefield walks. So what's your favourite? Have you visited any battlefields before, and have you visited specifically because you're a wargamer? Did you, like me, find the visit a useful and insightful learning experience and emotional connection to a particular period? What has been your favourite and why? And as always, I'd love to hear your stories, so please join the conversation in the comments below. So if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and share, and if you want to keep up to date with weekly content from this channel, please tap the bell notification icon. So until next week, stay safe, keep gaming, and of course, keep rolling high.